Okay, let's talk about how to absolutely hijack human attention. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We are literally deconstructing a masterclass in digital storytelling, specifically a viral explainer designed for a Bangla language channel about why Bangladesh faces the world's deadliest cyclones. By unpacking this playbook, we're not just looking at the gripping history and science of these storms. No, we are uncovering the hidden algorithmic secrets designed to maximize watch time, shares, and subscribers. These are the exact psychological triggers used on us every single time we open an app. So let's dive right in.
Here's our roadmap for this deconstruction. We're going to look at crafting the perfect hook, explaining the geography trap, pacing the historical timeline, delivering that all-important emotional twist, and finally, packaging the whole thing for viral retention.
First up, Section 1, crafting the perfect hook. Because let's be real, every successful narrative lives or dies by its first 3 to 30 seconds.
Look at this opening line. In 1970, one storm from the Bay of Bengal killed hundreds of thousands in a single night. Notice the sheer velocity there? The playbook strictly dictates that you speak this over the absolute strongest, most dramatic clip you have. There's no, "Hey guys, welcome back," no slow animated logos, no warm-ups. It immediately establishes a massive, catastrophic loss of life in a single night. It sets the highest possible stakes right out of the gate and introduces the central mystery. Why does this happen here?
To pull this off, you have to be ruthless. You must cut any slow intros, plunge the viewer straight into the chaos of the raging sea and dark clouds. Why? Well, because in today's scroll-happy media landscape, you have maybe 3 seconds before someone swipes away. You have to hook them fast. Then you end this 30-second chaotic intro with a strategic question, something like, "Why Bangladesh?" again and again. That acts as a soft promise. It tells the viewer, hey, if you stick around, your curiosity is definitely going to be rewarded. It's honestly a masterclass in audience retention from second zero.
Moving on to Section 2, explaining the geography trap. So how exactly do you explain complex science without completely boring your audience to sleep? To explain the devastation, the script introduces a genuinely terrifying concept, the storm surge. But notice how it doesn't just give you a dry textbook meteorological definition. Instead, it uses highly visual, dramatic language. It describes a giant wall of seawater that gets trapped and stacked higher and higher by a funnel-shaped bay. It makes the science feel immediate, tangible, and deeply threatening. It almost feels more like a thriller movie than a science lesson.
The script basically breaks this complex geography down into a deadly, perfectly logical sequence. First, a storm forms in the bay. Second, it pushes massive volumes of seawater right into a narrowing funnel of a coastline. Third, this creates a towering 10 to 20-foot surge that just crashes into a flat delta where tens of millions of people live. And the fourth step, the fatal trap, there is absolutely zero high ground, no hills to stop the water. By building this clear mini-narrative step by step, the explainer ensures the viewer completely understands exactly what these communities are up against.
Okay, Section 3, pacing the historical timeline. A good documentary-style video needs solid proof, right? But it has to be perfectly paced. The script walks the viewer through 3 major historical storms: the 1970 Bola cyclone, Cyclone Sid in 2007, and Cyclone Amphan in 2020. But here is the secret editing sauce to keep you hooked. The visual clips during this historical recap are strictly capped at 2 to 4 seconds each. The rule is no static shots longer than 5 seconds. This relentless, rapid-fire visual pacing makes the historical data feel like a high-stakes action sequence, not some dusty textbook reading. When talking about that 1970 Bola cyclone, the script brings up a staggering number, an estimated 300,000 to 500,000 casualties. But the strategist includes a really vital warning for creators here. You must only use real, verifiable, estimated numbers from credited sources. You never ever invent or exaggerate death tools for clickbait. Why? Because real numbers build credibility, and fake claims will instantly and permanently destroy a channel's trust. The drama has to always be anchored in the actual truth. To give this history more context, the script categorizes the cyclone's destructive elements into 3 weapons. You've got wind, which rips off roofs and uproots trees. You've got rain, which swells the rivers and causes inland flooding. And finally, the storm surge, which drowns flat coasts. By doing this, the script clearly identifies the surge as the absolute deadliest weapon. It sets up this crucial realization that drowning, not the wind itself, is what causes the massive loss of life, and this setup leads right into the central mystery.
Which brings us to this pivotal mid-narrative question. Amphan in 2020 was actually a much stronger storm than Bola in 1970, yet far, far fewer people died. So why is that? The strategist calls this the 90-second rehook. Right around the time when audience attention naturally starts to dip, you drop this fascinating, counterintuitive question to completely rebuild their curiosity. It basically forces them to keep watching to find out the answer.
Let's look at Section 4, delivering the emotional twist. Because let's face it, raw data alone doesn't drive shares, emotion does.
For the first half of the video, Bangladesh is framed through what we can call the old narrative. Basically, a small, vulnerable nation trapped by its own geography and constantly victimized by nature. But then comes the brilliant narrative flip. They didn't just give up. The new narrative reveals Bangladesh as a global pioneer, literally the world's teacher in disaster survival. This dramatic shift from tragedy to triumph delivers a massive emotional payoff. And that feeling of inspiration, that is exactly what drives an audience to hit the share button.
So, how did they actually do it? The script outlines concrete, real-world solutions, thousands of raised, incredibly sturdy cyclone shelters, and the implementation of modern early warning weather forecasting. But the real emotional core here relies on the people. Hundreds of thousands of trained volunteers, everyday heroes really, who literally race into villages on bicycles with megaphones and sirens right before the storm hits, just to make sure everyone gets to safety. It's a deeply human, incredibly moving resolution to all that terrifying science we learned about earlier.
Finally, Section 5, packaging for viral retention. This is the unseen, algorithmic packaging that holds it all together.
Because here's the hard truth. Even the greatest script in the world won't be seen if nobody clicks on it. The playbook demands a highly optimized thumbnail. We're talking a high-contrast image of a dramatic storm surge, maybe a bright accent color pointing to the action, and strictly 2 to 3 bold words, something in Bangla like 5 lakh dead or in English, deadliest storm. The visual intrigue has to provoke massive curiosity without crossing the line into cheap clickbait. It's honestly fascinating how a split-second visual decision entirely dictates whether a story lives or dies online. Take a look at this metadata strategy. The behind-the-scenes presentation is just as important as the historical data itself. The playbook suggests using dual titles, testing a mix of Bangla and English to see what drives the absolute highest click-through rate. And it explicitly notes that the very first line of the upload description is the most critical for search engine optimization. Every single character typed out outside of the actual video is meticulously designed to feed the algorithm and pinpoint the target audience.
And then there's the Edit Bay retention checklist. First, you gotta burn English captions directly onto the screen for the massive percentage of people who scroll with their phones muted. Second, insert a pattern break, like a sudden change in music or pacing, at the start of every new section to kind of reset the viewer's brain. Third, as we mentioned, absolutely no static shots over 5 seconds. And lastly, use only credited, verifiable footage. This relentless, manufactured momentum is exactly what keeps you glued to the screen. The script then closes out with a very specific call to action tied directly to the viewer's curiosity. It ends with, "You won't want to miss the next one." See what that does? It leaves them satisfied, yet hungry for more. But looking at how brilliantly and honestly, almost ruthlessly structured this playbook is, it leaves us with a real question. The next time you find yourself endlessly scrolling and glued to a screen at 2 a.m., will you be able to spot the exact moment the algorithm hooked you?